Episode 2 of House of the Dragon Season 3 picked up exactly where the premiere left off, and honestly, it felt like a completely different show from what we got in Season 2. The energy, the scale, the emotional stakes, all of it was dialed up to where it needed to be. This is what peak Game of Thrones television looks like, and it has been a long time since I felt this way watching a show in this universe. We had dragons front and center once again, Vhagar obliterating Harrenhal from the inside out, Aemond going on an absolute tear through everything in his path, Daemon doing the exact same thing through the halls of the Red Keep, and right at the center of all of it, Rhaenyra finally getting her first kill. And what a kill it was! Otto Hightower, the man who has been pulling strings and scheming since before the dance even began. Meeting his end at the hands of the Queen, he spent his entire life trying to keep off that throne. So let's break all of that down, talk about the ending, dig into what it means for where the season is headed, and I'll give you my honest thoughts on the episode overall. Before we get into it though, I want to quickly say, if you're someone who watches these breakdowns every week and you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. Season 3 is shaping up to be something genuinely special, and I'm going to be covering every episode with full breakdowns, theories, and analysis. Just hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single one. Alright, let's get into it. Rhaenyra took the Iron Throne, and the image of her walking through the throne room, through the blood of Otto Hightower pooled across the stone to ascend those steps and finally sit where she was always meant to sit, that is going to be one of the defining images of this entire series. I don't think that moment landed purely as a victory sequence either. There was so much weight behind it, because the blood she was walking through wasn't just Otto's. Symbolically, it represented every drop of blood that has been shed throughout this entire conflict. Her son Lucerys taken far too early, and now Jacaerys, whose body was returned to her after the Battle of the Gullet. That scene where Rhaenyra first sees Jace's body, the way she speaks to him as if he's still present, refusing in those first raw moments to accept that he was gone, was one of the finest pieces of acting this show has produced. This is her second son lost to the Dance of the Dragons, and for a moment, it genuinely looked like she was about to fall into the same spiral of grief that consumed her after Luke's death. But Daemon changed that, and this is where the writing did something really interesting. Rather than letting Rhaenyra sink into mourning, Daemon reframed Jace's death entirely. He didn't die in vain. He died for his queen. He died fighting for exactly what he believed in. And as painful as that truth is, Daemon made it clear that Jace would not have wanted to go out any other way. That shift from grief into channeled fury is what pushed Rhaenyra forward. Instead of retreating into herself, she turned that pain into purpose, and the purpose was taking King's Landing. Alicent's plan had been unfolding throughout the episode with a kind of quiet, desperate precision. She sent Aemond to Harrenhal with Vhagar, getting the most powerful dragon in existence out of the city, so that Rhaenyra's approach wouldn't immediately be met with the one force capable of matching her, and at the same time, she was working to allow Rhaenyra entry to negotiate some kind of peace. The reasoning behind it is something that's really grown on me over the course of these episodes. Alicent has come to see that she was a pawn in her father's game from the very beginning. Otto used her, positioned her, manipulated her choices, and she allowed that same dynamic to filter through to her own children. Helena's words, that she was happier before she was queen, clearly burrowed deep into Alicent's conscience. She doesn't want the throne anymore. She doesn't want the war. She wants out, and she wants to take her daughter with her. So she allowed Rhaenyra and Daemon to enter. She held up her end of the arrangement. The fighting that broke out wasn't her doing. It was the loyalists who acted on their own instinct to protect the Greens, regardless of what Alicent had agreed to. Daemon, for his part, carved through all of it with a kind of terrifying efficiency that reminds you exactly why he's one of the most dangerous people alive. And when Sir Rickard planted himself in front of the throne, ready to cut them both down, the gold cloaks arrived. Led by Sir Luther, a man Daemon had given the cloak to 2 decades ago. That loyalty didn't evaporate, it was just waiting for the right moment to resurface. The gold cloaks declared for Queen Rhaenyra, and that was effectively the end of green resistance inside the Red Keep. Then came the prisoners, and then came the moment that this episode had been building toward from its very first scene. Sir Otto Hightower, dragged out of the darkest cell in the dungeons, looking every bit as diminished as his power now was. Daemon's reaction, that slow, knowing laugh, said everything. This was a man who once held more influence over the Iron Throne than almost anyone alive, and now he was a prisoner in the very keep he had spent his life controlling. Rhaenyra had to execute him publicly. Not because she wanted to, but because the people watching needed to see it. She needed them to understand that she was not going to rule weakly, that mercy had limits, that those who had actively worked to take what was hers would answer for it. And here is where the episode gets genuinely complex in a way I really appreciated. Rhaenyra didn't find this easy. Otto was her father's hand. She grew up around him. He was a fixture of her childhood, even if he spent most of it undermining her. And she had never killed anyone before. You could see all of that playing out across her face. The conflict, the revulsion at what she had to do, and the quiet steel underneath it forcing her forward anyway. She did it in 2 strikes. Not clean, not ceremonial, real. And then she walked through his blood and she took the Iron Throne. And that shot, the reflection of Otto's blood on the floor as she ascended, is going to stay with me for a very long time. Seeing her sit on the Iron Throne, with Daemon beside her where he belongs, felt like a kind of closure, even knowing that the story is nowhere near finished. There was genuine emotional weight in that moment. It took me back to the very beginning of Season 1, when this was all just a distant possibility, a crown that kept slipping further out of reach. Now she has it. But having it and keeping it are 2 entirely different things. Alicent and Helena tried to flee. They didn't make it. They were caught and brought before Rhaenyra, and that's when Alicent saw her father's body for the first time. She had no idea he was being held in the same building. She didn't know he was already dead. And now she's standing in the throne room of a queen she helped into power through her own surrender, looking at the man who shaped her entire life lying broken on the ground. That changes things. Whatever peace Alicent thought she had negotiated with herself, that fragile inner peace built on the belief that she'd done the right thing, it just got significantly more complicated. Whether that hardens her or hollows her out completely is one of the most interesting threads heading into the rest of the season. Now let's talk about what's happening at Harrenhal, because Aemond's storyline this episode was as wild as anything we saw in King's Landing. Alicent sent him there to get him away from the city, and in theory, it worked. But what she couldn't predict was that Aemond was going to ride Vhagar straight into the castle and burn it from the inside. He killed everyone. Sir Simon Strong, who by all accounts was one of the gentler souls in that castle, his family, everyone. Aemond was looking for Daemon and he didn't find him, and that frustration just became destruction. Then something happened that shifted everything. One of Simon Strong's sons, in the chaos and carnage, managed to land a blow on Aemond, and from what we saw, it looks serious, potentially fatal if it goes untreated. So now Aemond, the most dangerous dragon rider on the green side, bonded to Vhagar, who remains the largest living dragon in the world, is wounded and desperate, reaching out to Mysaria of all people for help. And this is where things get genuinely fascinating from a theory standpoint. Mysaria now has Aemond's life in her hands, and Mysaria has always played the long game. She's been looking for Harrenhal. That's been a consistent want for her throughout the season. Daemon brushed her off when she raised it. So now imagine the calculation she's running. Here is the man Daemon hates more than perhaps anyone alive, lying wounded and helpless in front of her. She could hand him over to Daemon. She could use him as leverage to finally secure Harrenhal. She could heal him in exchange for his promise to give her exactly what she wants: the castle, the title, the legitimacy she's been after. And if she does heal him, if Aemond walks out of that deal with his life intact and a debt to repay, then what does a wounded, furious Aemond with Vhagar at his back do when he finds out his mother and sister surrendered King's Landing? The fallout from that is going to be enormous. There's also the question of what Rhaenyra does when she eventually learns that Aemond is alive and being sheltered somewhere. Because remember, Aemond is directly responsible for Lucerys's death. That wound has never healed for Rhaenyra. The day she gets confirmation that Aemond is breathing, every other priority gets reshuffled. Over on the Velaryon side, the aftermath of the Gullet was being felt just as heavily. Alan, Adam, and Baela were searching for Lord Corlys, who had gone missing after his confrontation with Lothar during the battle. They found him. He survived. But High Tide was in flames, and there was nothing left to rebuild from. In the wreckage of everything he had built, Corlys gave Aelin the one thing he'd always wanted: his name. The Velaryon name. That small, quiet moment in the middle of all of this chaos was actually one of my favorites in the episode, because it represented something real, a father acknowledging a son, a legacy being passed forward honestly, instead of being hidden away. And then there's Rhaena and Sheepstealer. Rhaenyra knows that a wild dragon entered the battle. She knows it influenced the outcome in ways that cost her Jace. What she doesn't know is that the rider was her own stepdaughter. She has tasked Daemon with hunting down the rider and the dragon. And Daemon, without realizing it, has just agreed to hunt his own daughter. Rhaena, knowing exactly how dangerous her situation is, has already moved. She went to the Vale and sought asylum from Jane Arryn, offering protection in return for shelter. It's a smart play. The Vale is defensible, Jane has her own interest to protect, and Sheepstealer is a wild card that no one is fully accounting for yet. But if Daemon ever learns the truth, that it was Rhaena riding that dragon, that her involvement contributed to the distraction that led to Jace's death, the choice he'll face between loyalty to his wife and loyalty to his blood is going to tear something open that might not close again. There's also a thread that I don't think has gotten enough attention yet, and it's the one around Ulf the White and Hugh Hammer. The way Daemon spoke to them in this episode, dismissive, contemptuous, treating them like they don't quite matter, felt deliberate. The show is planting seeds. These are two men with the blood of the dragon riding beasts of immense power, and they're being made to feel like they're less than they are. History tells us what happens when men like that feel disrespected for long enough. Keep your eyes on them. As for Aegon and Larys Strong, and I say this as someone who was frustrated by how much screen time their storyline took in Season 2, they're actually working well together this season. Their dynamic has an unexpected chemistry, and the fact that Aegon is heading toward Rook's Rest to find a garrison loyal to Criston Cole gives him somewhere to land and regroup. When news reaches him that Rhaenyra has taken the Iron Throne, whatever that reaction looks like is going to define where his arc goes from here. He's not going to go quietly. That much is certain. My theory heading into the rest of the season is that the real threat to Rhaenyra's reign isn't going to come from the military front. It's going to come from within. She has the throne. She has King's Landing. But Aemond is alive, Aegon is still out there, Daemon has unknowingly agreed to hunt his own daughter, Alicent just watched her father die and is now a prisoner in everything but name. And two dragon riders on her own side are quietly being pushed toward resentment. The war for the Iron Throne may be entering a new phase, but it is very far from over. And here's the theory I keep coming back to. What if Myseria's decision about Aemond becomes the pivot point for everything? If she heals him and extracts a promise from him in return, Harrenhal, safety, whatever she negotiates, she effectively becomes a player operating on both sides of the conflict. She's done it before. She knows how to survive in the spaces between power, and a healed, grateful, angry Aemond with Vhagar is a weapon that could be pointed at almost anyone. One thing I also want to touch on before we wrap up is the opening of this episode, because I think it deserves more credit than it's going to get in the broader conversation. The silence of it. No score, no grand dramatic declaration, just Rhaenyra confronted with what the Battle of the Gullet actually cost her, Jace's body floating in the water among everyone else's. That visual is loaded with meaning, because it's the show reminding us, and reminding Rhaenyra, that having the blood of the dragon does not make you immune to loss. It doesn't protect the people you love. Death reaches everyone eventually. The dragons make you powerful, not untouchable. That's a theme this season seems committed to exploring, and I think it's going to get darker before it gets lighter. The production itself also deserves real credit here. The visual storytelling across this episode was genuinely cinematic. Vhagar emerging through the clouds over Harrenhal. That image alone is worth pausing on. The dragons in flight, the light catching the scales, the sheer scale of those creatures against the landscape. And then the intimacy of the throne room sequences, the close-up work during Rhaenyra's confrontation with Otto, the mirror of his blood. Whoever is directing and designing these episodes is bringing a visual intelligence that Season 2 occasionally lacked. The world feels enormous again, and that's exactly what this show needs to feel like in order to earn its place in the same breath as the early seasons of Game of Thrones. Rhaenyra sitting on the Iron Throne is the image this episode ends on, and it's the right one, because everything that comes after it is the question of whether she can hold it. The throne has been taken. The real challenge is what it costs to keep it. And with Aemond wounded but alive, Aegon still loose, Daemon hunting his own daughter without knowing it, and two dragon riders on the verge of resentment sitting right inside her own coalition. She is going to need more than dragons. She's going to need to be smarter than everyone around her at every turn with no room for error. Season 3 has made its intentions very clear in 2 episodes. This is going to hurt, and it is going to be extraordinary to watch. If you've been enjoying these episode breakdowns, honestly, the best thing you can do is subscribe and share this with someone else watching the show. Every week, I'm going to be here with full analysis, ending explanations, and theories for what's coming next. We're only 2 episodes into what is already shaping up to be the strongest season this show has had, and I don't want you to miss a single piece of it. Subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you for episode 3.